Okay.
But Jake, it seems you've changed your name to Hal Ginsberg.
Yeah, you're gonna need to rename yourself there, Jake. Or I can do it for you if you'd like.
Frozen.
Yeah, so I was. Yeah, thank you.
And
And
do you
I'm
have your
gonna-
camera on?
Yeah, can you not see me?
Let me put speaker view on. Now I can. Okay, we're good. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah, so we will probably wait just one more minute or so, see if anybody else hops on before we go ahead and get started here. But thank you, everybody who is on. I might get on my phone as well in case my computer, has issues at any point. So I'm about to hop on as well. If you could let me in the waiting room in a second on my phone.
Okay, technical support should be watching and let you in. We have a fancy meeting today. I have technical support. I just like to introduce myself. I am Kat Lee. I am the co-chair of Our Revolution, and my co-chair is Jake Burdett, who you should see right now. And I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. I think
Actually, I'm sorry, Kat. I had a
you had
I got a slideshow set up. I'm going to share my screen soon, but there's just some general business stuff before we get to the panel that I want to get out of the way. But I will share my screen now. But yeah, one of the things. Am I a co-host? I think you might have to make me.
Okay, hold on. I think that's the problem. So yes, there you go. Oh wait, I don't want to do that. I want to keep my host privileges on here. Make co-host. Okay, it should be able to share.
Cool, thank you. And you could still see the waiting room there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so let's get started here. So first off, thank you, everybody. And so we are now recording. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming on the monthly meeting today for Our Revolution Howard County. It is an exciting meeting for us because this is actually our very first meeting that we have had as the newly elected steering committee for Our Revolution. That's why I think Kat was introducing herself as one of the newly elected co-chairs from last month. So this is our very first meeting as the new steering committee. So thank you to all the steering committee members.
I can't hear you, Jake. We cannot hear Jake.
Is that better? Is that better?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay. All right. I'm talking through my phone. I'm using my computer, but talking through my phone. So there we go. Sorry about that. But yeah, I want to give each steering committee member, new steering committee member, a chance to introduce over from last year. And so not all the stuff's relevant, but as Kat alluded to, we are going to have a panel discussion around some issues happening in our library system, as well as the lack of unionization that has occurred there. And so we're going to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves on the panel in a little bit. But yeah, so first, hello, everybody. My name is Jake Burdett, the other co-chair of Our Revolution Howard County. 25 years old, born and raised here in Elk Ridge. and got involved through the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016 with national politics, went away to college at Salisbury University, graduated in May 2020, and have been back here in my hometown ever since, doing local organizing. And so that's my story. Kat had introduced herself a little bit earlier, and we'll have another chance to do so when we get to the panel. But Paul, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, Paul Basich. I'm the former chair of Our Revolution in Howard County since it began, I guess, in 2016. My wife and I have only been residents of the county since 2016. I identify as a labor socialist. I am primarily involved and engaged and interested in education, internal education, labor issues, and the environment, especially the Green New Deal. That about covers it. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Paul. I think Lindsay Sands said she'll be on a little bit later, but she's I think our youngest steering committee member of Sunrise Howard County Youth Environmental Organization.
I'm here right now.
Oh, sorry, I didn't. All right, yeah, sorry. Well, please introduce yourself, Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I just graduated from Wild Lake High School, and
Congrats.
I'm part of Sunrise, and we've been working on environmental things. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. And Percy, are you here by any chance? Is Percy here? I don't think so. But I know Diedrich from the steering committee is on. If you want to introduce yourself real quick, Diedrich.
Yes, Diedrich Asante Muhammad. Grew up in Columbia, went to elementary, middle school, high school. Currently, I've been back in Howard County the last Columbia.
Kind of breaking up, DJ.
Sorry, what'd you say?
You're breaking up a bit.
But yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just said I grew up in Howard County. I professionally have been focused on racial economic inequality for the last 20 or so years, and glad to be getting more engaged in local politics.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Diedrich. Thank you for running. Thank you for being here. And we do have other steering committee members as well, but they may not be on at the moment. But we've also got Percy Lee, Beth Velasquez Snedden, Marg Goodland, and Joan Pontius, who had ran in District 5 for County Council in the previous election cycle. So meet the new steering committee, especially for those of you who are new to the organization. Hopefully this is not your last time coming to one of our meetings. But moving on, again, in case you are new to the organization, just to sort of give you all an idea of who Our Revolution is, what is this organization, what are we about, what do we do, what's our background, etc. I actually, just grabbed this off of the Our Revolution national website, a bit about our history. Bernie Sanders launched this organization, Our Revolution, America's leading grassroots funded progressive political organizing group to empower everyday Americans to stand up to the corporate interests that seek to manipulate our government for personal gain. And Our Revolution National has a people-powered movement that's advancing the political revolution by carrying out a 5-point plan to win. Those 5 points are organizing a national network of state and local grassroots groups to fight for change from the bottom up. And so that's what we are, is we are one of these local chapters trying to build this progressive movement from the bottom up in a grassroots fashion. Their second point of the 5-point plan is holding politicians in power accountable and putting the needs of working Americans first. I'll add over the needs of corporations. Number 3, we're fighting for progressive policies and taking on corporate power. There it is, to win healthcare for all, workers' rights, climate justice, voting rights, and more. The 4th plank is we're electing progressive champions up and down the ballot, from county commissioners to members of Congress like Representatives AOC and Cori Bush. And the last one, we're transforming the Democratic Party into a more progressive party by challenging the influence of the establishment and its big money donors. So basically the heart of, grassroots politics right there. If you're interested in becoming a dues paying voting member, there is a link right there. And, after these meetings, I do always email out these PowerPoint presentations that we make. And so any links in here, you all will have access to after I email out this PowerPoint, as well as the recording of the meeting itself. And so that's what our revolution is about. I would say what I'm going to add to this mix, or what I hope to add to this mix, and big reason why I decided to run for co-chair last month, is absolutely, Bernie Sanders was what got me into politics. And, of course, they focus a lot on national issues, Medicare for all, climate justice, voting rights, things like that. But there's also a lot of overlap with those issues at the local level. And I feel like that's where we have the biggest ability to influence things, have an impact, is at the local level. And so at least since I've gotten, graduated college, moved back here to Howard County in 2020, I've really, switched my focus from national issues to local issues, but never forgetting about all these Our Revolution, Bernie Sanders principles of standing up for the needs of regular working people over corporations who want to take everything, take from the public taxpayers for their private profit. And so, I hope that we can continue to do more local organizing. Don't forget about the national stuff, still advocate around that, but especially a focus on the local stuff, holding, corporations accountable, buying off of politicians, which at the local level turns out to be disproportionately, but not exclusively, developers. And so, with no further ado, just some upcoming events in the community I want to put on people's radars. Every Monday night, every single week, not once a month like our monthly meetings, but every single week, Our Revolution National has a weekly national organizing call. They usually bring on different guest speakers, including, big movement, progressive movement organizers, union leaders, progressive elected officials, things like that. I'm not quite sure who they have on, tonight, but for example, there will be a call tonight. And so our meetings, at least for now, are going to be, first Mondays of the month at 7 p.m. We may switch that at a future time, but nonetheless, as soon as our meetings end, there is an Our Revolution National weekly call too that we encourage people to consider attending.
Just to
And-
interrupt you there, because they're no longer doing it every week. It's been, I think, every other week now.
Oh, okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
What do they call that? Bi-weekly?
Yeah.
Or semi-weekly? Yeah. Either way. Well, thank you. That's good to know. So do you know if they have one tonight by any chance? No. Okay. Well, not tonight, but nonetheless, I've got the link in there if you want to, tune in for next week's call. But thank you for that, Kat. And then, more locally, not tomorrow, but the Tuesday after that, another sort of grassroots, maybe not, they wouldn't self-identify as progressive, but definitely a grassroots citizen focused organization called the Howard County Citizens Association. They have their annual meeting. They only really have one meeting a year. Most everything else is just, email list testifying, but this is their one meeting of the year. It's at the Hawthorne Center in Howard County. You can also attend on Zoom. And I put the RSVP link in there, as well as if people want to pay dues and become a member. And also, I think I forgot to add on this slide with Our Revolution. Yeah, we have a link to
With
become a
regard to
voting member.
on that Howard County Citizens Association, you should mention that there will be 4 delegates who are going to be there, 2 county council members and 2 state delegates. So it's a good time to get together, meet them, and ask questions. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Alan. And Alan Schneider's involved with HCCA as well. And yeah, I think it might actually even be 5 guests. I think it's council members Deb Young and Liz Walsh, and then maybe delegates Chow Wu, who I think you work for, Alan, and then also Jen Terrasa and Vanessa Atterbury. Unless something's changed, I think those are the 5 speakers. And they're also, buying Lidos for people, but that's why you gotta, if you're gonna go, they want you to RSVP by tomorrow, because they're trying to get a head count of who's gonna go. But again, maybe they're not when identify as progressive on national issues or whatever, but they really only focus on Howard County stuff. So I learned a lot just by being on their email list about, very hyper specific Howard County issues, statistics, things like that. And, so I support their group and, encourage people to consider going there. And then at the end of the month, Monday, June 26th, from 7 to 8:30 p.m., our friends at the Progressive Democrats of Howard County have their monthly meeting. And so I put the registration link there. And then again, at least now, we may move this in the future, but at least for now, this organization, Our Revolution Howard County, our monthly meeting time is going to be Monday, first Monday of the month at 7 p.m. So that's Monday, July 3rd, at 7 p.m. for our next meeting, and hope to hear from Lindsay and maybe some of the other Sunrise students about some green schools initiatives and some other issues that are affecting the school system, like this school bus shortage potentially. And so we're still working out the details on that, and so we'll follow up on that. But last thing before we get to the library panel discussion, which is what I imagine most people are here for. Well, actually, this is related to the library. This is directly related to the libraries. Even though we were just sworn in, we were only just sworn in as a new steering committee, like a month ago. And so this is our very first meeting. We've still tried to be very active, hit the ground running, even between meetings. And there will be other opportunities to do that as well. I didn't get to include them all in the PowerPoint, but we have an education committee and some other committees that we can touch on a little bit, maybe after the panel. But even aside from that, what we've been doing in the month is there was this big issue going on in the community. It did just get voted on, but there was this massive, historically expensive. I say historically expensive because it would have been the most expensive capital budget project in Howard County's history if it had been approved, and that was a whopping $144 million library that was proposed at Lakefront in downtown Columbia. It was proposed, pushed by County Executive Calvin Ball and Governor Wes Moore. And it was really announced like last second with very little notice to the public, to the point where even some of our allied county council members like Liz Walsh were apparently not informed in advance about this, whopping announcement that apparently had been in the works for like well over a year. And so, much of the public was caught off guard. Even some of the council members were caught off guard. And, when it did get announced, it was only the very next day that the library, the $144 million library, appeared in the county budget, which was to be voted on in only a couple weeks. And so, aside from just the very eye-opening price tag of $144 million, there are some other really alarming features about this, aside from the lack of transparency, but also the fact that it was supposed to be a sole source contract for Howard Hughes Corporation with no competitive bidding process. Howard Hughes, if you know anything about local Howard County politics, Howard Hughes Corporation owns a majority of our local government and kind of calls the shots a lot more than the citizens. And, that's really not right. And so, this is the latest of Howard Hughes Corporation's attempt to take taxpayer dollars for their private profit. And so organizations like ours, Our Revolution Howard County, Progressive Democrats of Howard County Citizens Association, People's Voice, and a couple others, we all got together and we hosted a community town hall to have, to give residents the ability to speak about their concerns about this proposal. Because again, $144 million, while we have overcrowded schools, not enough teachers, not enough counselors, not enough public transportation, all these neglected community needs, and they're going to spend $144 million for Howard Hughes Corporation's profit when there was already another proposal to build a library for the same size, but for a much cheaper cost. And so, all these community organizations hosted this community town hall to give residents a chance to share their concerns and not be gaslit about them. And a lot of people came out. A lot of people expressed opposition to the project. And because of that, the news came and covered the town hall. So we were in WMAR, and then also all of our groups came together, submitted an op-ed in the Baltimore Banner, which ended up getting published. And then the Baltimore Banner even ended up, writing their own story about it, covering the community concerns. And so in the end, what ended up happening, the budget proposal that included the $144 million lakefront library, they voted on that not this past Wednesday, but the Wednesday before that. And there were some, in large part because of the community pushback from groups like ours, there were many, not only amendments introduced to scale the project back, but even amendments to the amendments that were being introduced like up to the hour of the vote. And so in terms of what actually ended up getting passed, some people may be happy or not happy to learn that there likely is going to be a lakefront library. But the good news is that it is not going to be for $144 million, because some of these amendments that were ultimately introduced and passed were things like removing the sole source contract aspect so that it does now need to be competitively bid. And, some other changes that make it, again, I don't think community members were necessarily against the idea of a library. They just felt like this was, more for the benefit of a private corporation than it was for the public. And so I'm hoping these amendments, give the public a better deal so that we can use some of this money on other things. And so that's just a quick little highlight of, what we've been up to in the month or so since we've been elected. And again, it is very related to this panel discussion. So I wanted to give that background information. And then, one other thing that's also related to the panel discussion. Another thing we did just today actually is the Starbucks in Ellicott City, right by us in Howard County here. Bunch of their employees have got together and started to organize to unionize, as a lot of Starbucks stores around the country have done. And they were doing an event today from 10 to 2 where they wanted people to come stop by and, say hello and show solidarity. And so once we found out about it, we promoted it, encouraged our members to go. You see Paul and Yvonne there in their the back of their Our Revolution shirts anyways. I couldn't get a better picture. Sorry about that. But thank you to everybody who came to that. We established contact with them, made it clear that we support them in their fight, and got an update on where they are. It sounds like they've already gotten enough employees to sign something to trigger a union vote to happen. And so right now they're just awaiting on a date for the unionization vote to happen. They haven't been given a date, but that should be what happens next. And so we will, thank you again, everybody who showed up, and for everybody who couldn't show up, but was still there in spirit. And so I say that that's related because the topics of our library panel today, which, I should say I had wanted.
Hey, can I make a comment or two about the Starbucks gang?
Yeah.
I'll just take 30 seconds. It was
Go for
very
it.
impressive. It's a great turnout. They're young. A majority of them have signed a petition vis-a-vis the National Labor Relations Board to have an election. There isn't one leader. This is wonderful. There are multiple leaders. Sometimes you have one leader, and that comes and goes. It can fail or succeed. They have multiple leaders. They share the responsibility. They want better wages, hours, working conditions, benefits, and most importantly, a grievance procedure. And it was terrific to meet them, and it was good to see all the community folks there. And we'll clearly all stay in touch with them. I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Paul. And yeah, I agree with everything he just said. I didn't really know what to expect walking into it, but they seem very well organized. They are, a very young workforce, as Paul said, but they all have their eye on the prize. I think it's 20 something people work there, and it sounds like only like one or two or maybe three of them are like not gung ho about the union, but for the most part, there's almost universal consensus there. And one thing that was interesting is of all days and times, I guess Starbucks decided to call like a little meeting today at that Starbucks with all the regional managers sitting in the middle of the thing. I think it might have been an intimidation tactic too.
This is no accident, Jake, obviously.
Yeah. I say that tongue in cheek. That was definitely planned. But luckily the workers didn't seem to let it keep them down. And there's only so much that Starbucks can do to stop it this far. And Paul was saying maybe they'll, close the damn store down. That's always a possibility. Last Hail Mary. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But again, we'll keep everybody in the loop. And so thank you all for the solidarity there. But yeah, so again, the reason I say that is related is Howard County is now at this point one of the last counties in central Maryland to not have unionized library staff. And whether it's public sector, private sector employees, Starbucks, libraries, I think all workers have a right to a union and fair bargaining. And so, I've wanted to, knowing Kat, and she's a librarian, she's very passionate about her job. And, I know some other librarians and they, are also passionate about their unions and their jobs. And so this was a topic that I had wanted to do a meeting on for a long time, not just about the union aspect, but also just even well before this $144 million lakefront library. It was already clear that public libraries, which should be for the public interest and the public good, were being sort of co-opted by developers and other for-profit private interests in a way that was very inappropriate and did not it diverted resources away from actually improving public library services. And so this was a problem that I had been noticing and wanted to do a panel or something about it for a long time. Then this lakefront library thing happened, as well as, before, another controversy with our library system. The chair of it, Tonya Akins, had gotten, in a little tiff because she closed the library early to let a private sorority host event there. And then the county got reported to the county auditor, and he started to investigate it. And the county council or the county executive and his allies on the county council tried to obstruct the investigation. And so again, before either of these two incidents happened, I had already wanted to do a panel discussion or some sort of event around the abuse and politicization in a bad way, in a corrupt way, of our public library system for profit interests. And also that I think that's connected to the bad treatment and low pay of library workers either, because when you have the public library system being co-opted by these private interests, it hurts the public and it hurts the workers. And so again, I had already wanted to do a panel about those things before the auditor situation happened, before the 144 lakefront library proposal happened, but then both of those things happened. And I think it just really illustrates how bad this problem is getting. And so those are a lot of the topics we want to cover, is a little bit about the $144 million lakefront library. But again, I have just gone through a lot of that, and a lot of our guests are, or a lot of our panelists are from out of county, might not be too familiar with that, and that's okay. But perhaps they have similar stories of similar boondoggles in their respective jurisdictions, but also they are all union people. And so talking about the need for unionized library staff in Howard County, because again, Howard County is basically, one of the last counties in central Maryland to not have unionized library staff. I want them to talk about, some of their struggles that even the unionized library staff continue to go through, even with the union, and maybe why those exist. the increasing politicization and abuse of our public libraries for private and developer profit, and also recent attempts to censor LGBTQ plus friendly library content nationwide. Not only is that also a workers issue, but it is Pride Month, and this stuff, these attacks from fascists essentially are getting more and more frequent and more serious. And so I think it's fitting that we touch on that. And so with no further ado, and we will have a Q&A session for audience to ask questions as well at the end. And we also have I think we might have some union folks from the Harford County, or union or non-union folks from the Harford County library system who I think will also at the end speak a little bit about legislative effort that they're working on to try to get either a union there, better conditions for union. So with no further ado, I thank you all for being patient, and I want to throw it off to the panelists to
Can I interrupt? Can I have you stop sharing your screen so people will be able to see the panelists?
yes, good idea.
Thank you.
Yep. But yeah, if you want to start with your introduction, go for it.
Yes, I'm Kat Wee. I have been a librarian for about 23 years. I have a master's in library science. I work for a public library. I'm also a shop steward for UFCW Local 1994, also known as McGeo. And I'm gonna, I guess, ask the other people who are in here that are panelists to go ahead and turn on their cameras and introduce themselves. I think I'll go ahead and start with Cassandra Harper.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Cassandra Harper. I am on the executive board of Local 1994 UFCW in Montgomery County, Maryland. I am a shop steward in Montgomery County Public Libraries, and I have worked as a librarian in public libraries since 2007.
Okay, let's go to Anita.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anita Bass. I'm from the Baltimore County Public Library. I am the union president for Local Lodge 4538, and I've been with the library system in the circulation department for 11 years, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And we also have John Berry in here.
Yeah, hi, I'm John Berry. I'm an organizer and representative for McGeo 1994. And I've been working also representing PGC MLS and a lot of the workers there. So I was glad to hear that people at Howard County are interested in organizing. So.
And we also have Allie Bowerman.
Yes, hi. So I'm Allie, and I'm a children's resource specialist at the Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore City. And I'm also part of the organizing committee for Pratt Workers United, which is the union for the Enoch Pratt Free Library. We're currently in the process of starting our bargaining period for our first contract. And I'm really excited to be with everyone today.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yes,
and I'm
thank
not
you.
sure if we have anyone else, because there are a few people that were going to be coming in, but if I missed anyone, please. Okay,
Yeah, I think
I have no. Okay.
Yeah, that was 5 people, right? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the panel. Yes, well, thank you all for agreeing to be a part of this and share your different perspectives, even if you are from neighboring counties. I'm sure that there's still a lot of overlap and a lot of similarities there. And so now that I have explained a little bit of the context of part of the reasons why we want to have this meeting, not just for the union stuff, but also just how our public libraries are being abused and co-opted by private interests in general, and how that could actually have a detrimental impact, not only on the public, but also on the workers. And so, I already talked quite a bit about this $144 million lakefront library proposal. And again, there was a lot of community opposition to it. But, CAT is very interesting because, community opposition is one thing from the general public, but, also opposition from the staff or concerns from the staff, I think is very valid and very legitimate as well. And although Kat does not work in the Howard County public library system, Kat, did you have, what were your concerns or thoughts about the lakefront library proposal from like a librarian or staffer's perspective?
I would say from the staffer's perspective, it was quite a large library, bigger than some very large city libraries. And then the concern, and I did speak to some people at HCPL, was were they going to have enough staffing to cover that big of a library? That was a big concern. And then you're thinking about safety. So if you don't have enough staff and you have a really large building, you get safety concerns. So then are we going to have security there? Are we going to have cameras? And there's costs with all of that. If you have more staff, that's a huge cost right there. If you need to have security cameras, again, more cost. And then if you need security guards, how are you going to do that? Are they going to be part of HCPL staff? Are you going to contract out? There's always, more money, and the more stuff you have, and they talked about an auditorium, all this different equipment, that stuff also can break, get damaged, and then there are more costs with that. In the meantime, and it's supposed to be educational support, you realize they are not using any of that money for our overcrowded schools in Howard County. So that's a huge concern. Like, you have to take care of the kids at school before you have a huge, gigantic library with even more, educational offerings. So that's a huge concern. And it kind of goes into the concerns that even though we do have a union where I'm at, that libraries, large public libraries, have a lot of safety concerns all the time. And this is something people don't realize. And they often go, oh, I remember a library when I was 10 and it was so much fun and I felt so safe there. But in some of our larger urban areas now, that is really not the case. And I'll let someone else jump in on that one.
And I'm curious from the out of county people, I'm curious, how much the word got out about this lakefront library proposal. Our panelists from out of county, I'm curious, did you all hear about this $144 million lakefront library proposal before it was voted on? And if so, what were your initial thoughts hearing about what was being proposed? And also, I'm curious from the out of county panelists, this problem I'm describing of basically, our local government being co-opted by developers and other private interests, and then using that influence to infiltrate the library system and do these boondoggle projects. Have you all in the other counties seen examples of? I see Allie had her hands up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that so I think the city library system, I work in a branch library. So we kind of get the experience of seeing different libraries in different neighborhoods and seeing like the overall value of that neighborhood influence maybe who's interested in hopping on a development project. And I think especially with something like this, and I did actually hear about it, oddly enough, in we talked about it in one of my master's classes. So, but as a kind of an example of one of these sort of really frou-frou project that's kind of, it's strange to complain about it because it's one of those things where it's like, how dare you? Of course we want a $144 million library. But when you get into it, it's like, is that something that we really need to spend? Or are these higher ups who are having these like adorable fantasies that can never really achieve the goals that the workers are actually like looking forward to building as library spaces? But I also think that libraries for a very long time have been heavily tied to real estate interests and just developers, I guess, in general, right? You want to make your neighborhood seem better. And because they do have that kind of PR element to it, I think it's easy for them to sneak things past you sometimes in these budgets, but
Yeah, no, great point. And yeah, it's definitely a hard PR sell because the developers are clever. They you know, do their for-profit projects by combining it with something that has very popular reception like a library, so that when you come out critical of it and are suspicious, is this really going for the public, it makes it look like you're anti-library. And so it's a difficult position to be in. But yeah, Cassandra.
Hi, sorry, I had to unmute myself. A number of the library systems in this region have done either refresh or renovations on multiple branches throughout the whole region. If you look at District of Columbia, Montgomery County, Prince George's County as well. And oftentimes what you find is that there's a list of promises that the library administrations make to the staff and to the community of what you're going to get. And it's going to be so beautiful. It's going to be so great. And oftentimes, and I've worked in several of them, I've worked in different library systems throughout the region. I've worked in District of Columbia, and I also work for Montgomery County. So I'm talking on my experience in different jurisdictions. You open the doors are barely even ready to open for the public. So they've come in, they've done this building, they've made this building, and nothing in the building works. There's not even books in the building. You know, they promise this technology or this new system that's going to have this great technology. For example, those of you who may know, there's a library that opened with allegedly RFID book scanning. This thing cost millions of dollars to put in this particular locale. And it only worked for about a year, if I'm correct, maybe a year and a half, but it certainly doesn't work now. They put in a special way that you could, I'll explain what RFD is in a minute, but they put in the special conveyor belt in the building for the books as they're returned in massive loads. Would allegedly, a scanner would scan all these books. This is what RFID is, without a human actually being able to scan it manually. And it never worked properly. If you look at the MLK library in the District of Columbia, even and libraries have historically been used for this by developers. If you look at the MLK library, which was originally built in 1972, where I worked, that building was built with this state-of-the-art vacuum tube like you used to have at the drive-through tellers that would suck the new books in, and all it did was tore up all the books, and it never worked. And so these are things that when you have these big projects, they are something that need to be scrutinized by the community, because you have the directors of these library systems they really do court politicians and corporate interests to get this money. And in some cases, the relationship between those parties, particularly in my opinion, the library directors, needs to be very seriously questioned, their ethical role in it. And you'll see that from a development of an integrated library system, which is the system that you people use to search their books, to the actual building itself. So it is really a serious problem, and it's something that is across the entire region, and possibly, I can only speak for what I've noticed in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, but I would definitely say it's probably a national problem.
Yeah, no, sorry. I unmuted on the wrong device, my bad. But yeah, so I think that's a great point, Cassandra, of, the developers and the politicians can make all these fancy promises about, sure, it costs us much money, but it's going to be so great. It's going to be so futuristic. But, once the money is spent to the developer to build the project, and then they don't quite, deliver on everything that they said it was going to be, suddenly, oh, well, now it's an extra $20 million to repair the things that didn't quite work how they thought. And guess who's going to have to pay that $20 million? Us. Or yes, the taxpayer.
And that's the running game. Like, you'll notice they'll build these huge projects, and then build an incomplete building, and then they keep coming back to the cash cow, for a lack of a better expression. Okay, you need that fixed. Okay, that's another 22 million. You need us to fix this. That's another 2 million there. So it's a game.
Yeah, and it's, you know, that's the another gripe about it that I didn't mention is the architect Heatherwick for the project has a long history of significant cost overruns, sometimes double the original thing. So, you know, 144 million is just what they said. If it got approved, it could have easily been, you know, nearly 300 million. Yeah, Anita? You might have to unmute yourself there.
Okay, I was gonna say, I was saying, it's funny that we're talking about this because our library system just got information on a new branch for the Essex area. And they've received $6 million for funding for a design study, just for the design study for a new Essex library. And they said that they're using it for, trying to see, 4.5 acres in the Essex area. And they're going to make sure it's embedded in a neighborhood with diverse residents, easy accessible to those who are on foot or take the bus, close to schools and other community assets, offer some green space, and located in a place where the library could best serve the community. So it's interesting that to find out that things happen and change as progress goes along. They didn't give us a year of when they were gonna, start digging in the dirt or anything. They just said a few years. So I'm not sure when that's gonna start, but this is all very interesting to hear.
Yeah, no, and again, you know, to remind people, you know, I had no idea. You know, I didn't get to talk to the panelists from out of county in advance and say, hey, is there similar boondoggle developer projects with the libraries in other counties? I didn't know. I didn't have a chance to confirm, but I thought it's such a problem in Howard County. Chances are it's probably an issue in other counties too. And it sounds like it absolutely is. And even what Anita's saying of, you know, the developer in the county saying, oh, this is the best spot. It's the most inclusive spot. It'll, here for equity issues. And it's like, maybe that's true. And if that's true, that's great. But maybe it's really just the most profitable place that they can put it. And so they're trying to say it's, you know, it's equitable and it's diverse and all these things to make it sound better. And again, maybe it really is, but because of the private profit motive in these projects, it causes the community to be very skeptical. And I would say rightfully so, especially when some of these developers and architects have a long track record of playing this game, as Cassandra called it. Because once you commit and start the project and then they say it's another 20 million, what are you going to do? Just give up after you've already spent all that money? You kind of have to go through with it. And so, yeah, thank you all for sharing those perspectives. And so another question I had sort of, and I think Cassandra put it great of, you know, the library directors in each county is highly influential. Usually those are appointed by, I think in Howard County, it's actually they're appointed by the library board, but the library board is appointed by the county executive and the county council. And so if all the people making the appointments are co-opted by these special interests, then their appointees may also be co-opted by special interests. And in fact, here in Howard
Do you
County,
mind? I didn't mean to interrupt. Do you mind if I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
go for it.
In Montgomery County, it's even a little more dicey because we are a county government library system. We're not run by a county board. Our director only has one person between her and the county executive, and that's the chief accounting officer for the county. So she's a political person. Just wanted to share that one.
No, good to know. And, you know, I happen to like the county executive in Montgomery County at the moment. And so maybe right now I would say that's not the worst thing in the world. But, you know, 4 years from now, when maybe I don't like the county executive, then yeah, that might be, and maybe it's a problem now. And I'm just not.
No. It was really a serious problem under the previous director. And I think it gives the the library directors in our county, not so much an inappropriate relationship with the county executive, but one with business interest in the county and in the country
Yeah,
because of the
absolutely.
services that they have access to. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why, in my opinion, when we had the incident with our county library director, this is why she was never held accountable for, doing something which you could say, oh, so she closed it early to let a private group host an event. Is that the biggest deal in the world? Well, it was kind of an instance where maybe the cover up was worse than the actual, thing that they did in the first place, but that's why when, all these people, these different entities are all sort of co-opted to some degree by special interests, that's why they cover for each other and they watch each other's backs. And Ahmed, thank you for hopping on. I see you got your hand up. Right now, we're just talking with the panelists, and we are, after we ask a couple more questions, then we're going to throw it to the audience to ask questions. But you will have a chance to ask your question in a second, Ahmed. But a thing,
And I was going to jump in on that particular incident that was particularly heinous with the Howard County CEO, was they sent staff home early so that the party could take place, meaning they were not paid for that time. And I have to say, in the county where I work, because we have a union, that could not take place. They have to be paid. They should not be taking their own leave. And everything has to be open to the public. You can't have an event at our library. Our county executive would be quite disturbed by that if we had a private event for only certain people and we told employees to go ahead and take leave. That absolutely 100% couldn't happen without there being a lot of drama, let's put it that way, and the director would be held accountable. So yeah.
And they tried to claim that, closing it down early for the private event didn't cost the public anything. But if they told workers that they could go home and take sick leave that they otherwise would not have taken, then, it kind of did, cost the public some money. But nonetheless, it was an abuse, in my opinion. And, it should have been allowed to be investigated, and it was not. But, on that note of how these things are able to sort of get a rubber stamp and get passed, whether it's, holding the event for allied group or, these library expansion renovations, that are really just sort of clever gifts for developer buddies. One of the ways that they have to do it is, one, have the, county council and county executive in their pocket, and also have the, the library board director or whatever in their pocket. But then also it's getting the library board themselves on board. And in Howard County, again, the library board is appointed by the county council and the county executive. And we absolutely do have people with massive conflicts of interest on our library board. The chair of the library board is a sitting board of education member, Antonio Watts, who has taken Howard Hughes Corporation money and has been very developer friendly on their time on the Board of Education. Another library board member, Sabina Taj, former Board of Education member, also took Howard Hughes money, also very close ally to the county executive and very developer friendly. And then the vice chair, Philip Dodge, is, one very entrenched in the Downtown Columbia Partnership for the future development of downtown, which Howard Hughes Corporation has a huge stake in. And so, that is an essential part of how these things that, in my opinion, are not only against the interests of the public, but also against the interests of the workers. That's how these things are able to get passed, is you have these rubber stamps on the board. And so I'm curious, we've talked about the library director in other counties, but, people in other counties, do you all also have similar conflicts of interest that you're aware of on your respective county library boards, if you're comfortable sharing?
Well, I almost said it there. I'm trying to be careful not to say in my particular county, but in my library system, I think the biggest conflict of interest, and Kathleen can comment on this if she wants to, may be between our assistant director, and I'm going to say it publicly here, and a contract for an integrated library system that it seems that there was a lot of very unethical things done, like they went to a conference, they stayed in the same hotel, they stayed in a hotel room paid for these people. They partied, I hate to say this, were photographed by library employees at this very conference, having drinks in the hotel bar. And they, what was it they had us do, Catherine? They gave us like gifts from the company, tried to give it to county employees, but they weren't that expensive, but they were like, wear this t-shirt on, that we got this new ILS system that said COHA. And I was like, I'm not wearing that. I'm not advertising the light. We don't do that for any other service we have. Why would I wear that for this?
Oh,
And so it looked like, I don't know, but and I don't like this cast aspersions like that out in the public, but it looked questionable. It was very questionable.
Yeah.
It was very questionable, and even they tried to get us to join this activity where you had to pay, and that was really odd. And the system worked pretty poorly, and they actually had to hire a person to handle the problems with this so-called system that they decided to buy, an entire human being with a salary dedicated to her to deal with the issues with this new system. So we wonder, like, was it really a good purchase in the long run? And the other thing that an assistant director did in the system we work in is buy a lot of self-checkout machines. And then kind of a forced thing where forcing us to have numbers and making us force customers to use them. And customers honestly were upset because they like talking to the checkout people, who work in circulation. They didn't want to use them, but we were like being forced and coerced and basically publicly shamed if our branch didn't have the numbers. It was quite sad.
Well, this is where unions kind of help, because you could get written up if you didn't show customers to do this. Like staff were counseled about this. Staff, I'm sorry, I think my mute was weird. Staff in our library system were counseled about not showing customer how to use a specific checkout machine, and you, without the union, you could have been written up about it. Because they were like forcing staff, you need to show them how to use the self-checkout. You need to show them how to use the self-checkout. Something's wrong with you if you're not showing them how to use the self-checkout.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up, because again, I'm still relatively new to this issue, and a lot of stuff at the local level does involve developers, and that's how some of the examples that we've seen of, private profit, getting their finger in the pie on the public libraries. But I didn't even think of it, but that's like another huge opportunity for sort of corrupt favors, if you want to call it that, of these different software companies who want to sell these, different technological software products. And if you know the right person in the county, then they'll give you that contract that may or may not work. And also, it sounds like they're like forcing you all to like show the library patrons how to do this automation stuff that like will eventually maybe put you all out of jobs, which seems, kind of gross in its own way. So
yes, literally it would put people in circulation, part of their job, if they could get everyone to always check out like you do in the grocery store. If you notice, how many actual grocery store cashiers do you have now? Not as many as you used to. And yes, it would take away union represented jobs. So a lot of us weren't that happy with the self-checkout machines. And also they broke a lot and often don't work properly.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you all for sharing that. And I did have a question about library foundations and how they all play into that. And maybe we'll get back to that question if we have some time, but there's some other important questions here that I don't want us to miss that I, want to ask. And so I want to ask to all the panelists, explaining almost to a skeptical person, like why should library workers be unionized? Somebody might say, Well, it makes sense in the private industry, you have the private companies just caring about profit. And so that means paying workers less. And so that's why workers need a union. But libraries, these are public entities. These are not for profit. So why, despite that, do you all think, all library workers should have a union? Anita, so you got your hand up. Oh, you might have to unmute yourself. Sorry.
All right. Yes, I know people ask that all the time, but it doesn't really matter where you're working. People want to feel like they are important. They want to have a seat at the table. They want to have a say. We started during the pandemic was when we really started pushing on it. And at that time, there was stuff that was coming out in emails. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know if we were getting paid for some of that time that we were closed. And I would hope that things would be a little bit different if we had a union right at that time. But as we were organizing, it helped us to organize and focus. We learned that we could negotiate our benefits and get job protections, get better health benefits for our part-timers. It's something that library workers need. They do need a seat at the table. They do need to be able to say, look, this is something that we don't like. They change things on us all the time. They just, want to throw stuff out there. To have a union for our library in Baltimore County Public Library with the IM is something that is golden to us. Yes, it's a challenge, but yes, we are making it through. We are under our second contract and we are proud of that. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you all, Anita, and you all just unionized last year, right?
We've been together. 2020 was when we were working on the legislation, and my union organizer is on here, Bridget Fitzgerald, and I know she can talk a whole lot about it. But we organized then, and we had to, because we are a public library, we had to have 2 bills pass, and we had to create a law. So once we got that through, we organized, got our first contract last year, and then we had the second contract that we worked on this year.
Okay.
So Bridget just put something in the chat.
Most library directors are changing their title to CEO.
Yes.
They may not be for-profit private sector employees, but they're beginning to operate them. Yeah, you're right about that's a very good point, Bridget.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Allie, I know you also in Pratt, they recently just became a union too, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's weird because it feels at once not recent and recent. I guess to answer the initial question you brought up of like, okay, why libraries? Like, why they specifically need to organize? And I think it's really kind of cool that we started out talking about buildings and building renovations because I think that was one of the things that at least brought me onto this project. I know that for us organizing, we were in a long gestational period, even before I kind of joined. But one of the major motivating things was a large renovation project and just feeling really helpless that everything about our jobs was being affected and they never asked us. I mean, they did, but you know how they do. They ask you just to pat themselves on the back for having asked. And when we talk about things like, okay, we get all of these self-checkouts and then they break, like the people that have the most knowledge about this, who are able to make the most cost-effective and the best and smartest decisions about how to run their libraries are librarians and other library staff, including ones who don't do library work, but instead just like they are part of the library, people who maintain our buildings, people who run security, kind of everyone. And that's who I want to be making the decisions about the library, and how it works is the patrons and the people that work there really like work with the public and in those buildings. And because we're the ones who know how to make the best decisions and how to make this work best for everyone. we just need the power to do that. And that's something that unions have been able to kind of bring us. And that is why we're really excited about contract negotiations.
Absolutely. And congrats and thank you both in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. Yeah, John?
Yeah, first of all, congratulations on the contract, and good luck with that. We just finished one at PGC MLS, and I am a representative for UFCW, but I would have wished that some of the other stewards could be there tonight, but actually they're going out and trying to lobby the council now that we passed the contract, and trying to make sure that they understand that it is in their political self-interest to actually support this very valuable library staff. So our point of view is sometimes when, yeah, we understand how corrupt things can get, but we then appeal to people's self-interest and remind people over and over again that this is a highly trained, highly skilled library staff, that if you don't, if you don't keep giving them a reason to stay, they're going to be leaving. Actually, the person who is going to be our CEO just got stolen away by the Library of Congress. So these things happen over and over again, and we just have to remind them, and the members of our library. We have been a union for a PGC in Prince George's County for well over a dozen years, but they never slow down. They never stop reminding people that they're there, and they never stop reminding people that you can't have a library. I mean, you may have some great equipment that you want to show off, but without a staff, you're going to be falling apart. So we want to make sure that people understand that connection. We keep doing it.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. And yeah, Cassandra?
Sorry about that. I was trying to unmute myself. I think it's important for libraries to have unions, because with my experience as a public librarian, my experience has been that the administrations are run in a very top-down hierarchical manner, and the directives are come out as directives, very serious directives to be followed without no input is ever asked from the rank and file staff. I don't know about other libraries, and this has been my experience in too. They generally do not appreciate comment and inquiry. It's looked as bad employee if you question. So a lot of people don't speak up. And so the only organization in which library workers have an opportunity to speak up is through their union and their elected stewards, or their stewards and their locals. And also increasingly, you have these different. Here in Montgomery County, I'm going to shift my thought here for a minute. There is also in some parts of the United States a movement to contract public libraries. There is a company right out here in Germantown called LLSI, which is my former director from DC Public Libraries, who got fired for her abusive treatment. And I will say that because that was public knowledge. She got fired from her abusive treatment from DC Public Library of the general staff at large, management and rank and file union staff, is now the president of that. It's the CEO over at LSSI. And that's a small company, but it has contracts in places like Tennessee and Arkansas, Kentucky, maybe some parts out in the West, where these libraries are now run by contractors, and they're not paid by they're not paid as government employees or people working under a library board. So that has some serious implications for access to information when you have libraries run by companies that are actually contracted out public library systems. And I'm going to mute myself because my dog started barking.
Yeah, no worries. Definitely a very interesting, point there. And especially, it rings back to what you said earlier about, just like even just getting your foot in the library world through like one county can open doors in the business world all across the country. And it sounds like that sort of happened there. And then also, yeah, you know, you're saying all these major decisions that affect the lives of the library workers are made without any serious input from the library workers. And, you know, one example of that with this lakefront library proposal, I left out a big part. Not only, you know, do they want to build the $144 million library, but part of the proposal is to tear down an existing library in a different location. And, you know, so this doesn't even, you know, net increase the amount of libraries we had. But, you know, my question, my thought was, okay, so if they're going to tear down the existing library and then build a new library, what if there's like a 3-month gap between when the existing library is torn down and when the new library is put up? What's going to happen with all those workers at the central library that's going to get torn down for those 3 months? Do they get paid leave? Are they just going to be shuffled to a different library in the county in the meantime? And so we had a town hall about this at that central library that's supposed to be torn down. And I asked the workers, like, what's the plan here? You know, this seems like it could affect your guys' lives like in a really great way. Like, what's the plan for you guys? They just didn't know. They seem like they're completely in the dark. They don't know about what's going to happen with their job, what's going to happen with this project. And to me, I would hate to be in that position. I would feel very stressful being in that position. So I guess one more question I'll ask before, you know, we turn it to the audience is, you know, definitely interested to hear from, you know, Allie and Anita on this, though anyone can speak up. But, you know, let's say a Howard County librarian or Howard County library staff is listening to this panel right now, and they want to know, what do I do to try to unionize my library? You know, what would be your advice on, you know, steps to take to make that happen? And also, you know, what are some of the things that some of the resistance that they should expect from administration or other outside forces, obstacles they may have to overcome in that process?
I can say something. So what, is there anyone here on this in this meeting that is from the Howard County Library? There isn't anyone. So I guess my suggestion is they need to reach out to a union, whatever union they want to get information from and to get started with, to help with organizing. And yes, there's going to be pushback from your, you know, administration. But once you get involved with the union and you start working on what your rights are, that should help you to get organized, because there's a process that you have to do. Allie?
I think I wouldn't be surprised if there is like a group of people that have either independently thought like, I'd like to start a union, or already maybe have started to have those conversations out loud. But the first step to having a union is always to talk to your coworkers about your working conditions. We have like, you know, big milestones that you need to meet along the way in terms of like concrete things you need to do to get the union off the ground, getting it recognized, officially voted in, all of that sort of thing. But then I think it's really important not to lose sight of that connection with your coworkers as the thing that really drives the whole union forward, because that's how you remember why it is that you set out to do it in the first place, is just like making sure to ground yourself in the issues that your coworkers are experiencing, so that you can kind of, you know, use that to build a future contract.
Thank you. Yeah, John, I saw you had your hand up as well.
Oh yeah, I was just saying, yeah, we have been reaching out in the past to Howard Community Library, and we are definitely looking for more interest. I guess there aren't any, but there isn't anybody from Howard Community Library here.
Yeah, maybe not on this call, but we do record this, and, you know, we'll send it out so people, even if they're not watching live, may see it, or there may be a worker on this call who doesn't feel comfortable revealing that because they're afraid of, maybe they'll lose their job or something if they speak out. But I hope there did seem to be at least a decent amount of, the administration's really trying to shove the lakefront library thing down their throat and kind of force them to accept it and like have these propaganda displays. Because we did go and Kat and I handed out flyers promoting this panel to the different library things. And there were people who came to our town halls that worked at the libraries. And so I do like to think that there is sort of silent approval, at least with some contingency of the local library staff here. But again, I can only imagine it's probably a scary thing because you might be taking a risk to your job by like speaking out publicly for something like that.
For sure, they would be, and Bridget just put in one of the biggest reasons, and I knew about that law, and it puts them at great risk. And also I've heard that the CEO in the past has threatened that they would have to get rid of half the staff, lay them off, if they had a union, because that would cost them so much more. And so you have a lot of people are quite scared. Even though I had some very good conversations with people, a lot of them did express the fact that decisions are made from the top and they're just told and they're not asked. And as far as Joe was saying, oh, they'll have that new library open, they apparently have not informed staff of that, because staff told me they weren't sure what was going to happen. And they also said, we hope they won't close Central Branch before the opening of that other library. But they don't know. And if someone's promised that, let's see what happens. But oftentimes promises get broken. So I wouldn't be so sure.
Yeah. Anita, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to mention what Bridget mentioned about the Howard County law that they have. And it's a shame what you just said about them losing their jobs and they don't know where they're going to go. Gosh, yeah. If anyone is on here, talk to your, like Allie said, talk to your coworkers and get that conversation going again. Because you all do need to have a voice.
And it is scary. I do just want to like remind people that it's always going to be scary. There's always going to be, you really have to inoculate yourself and your coworkers against those types of threats and fears, even if they're not real, even if they're just threats. That's a very real thing. And so it's going to be important that people rely on their coworkers to kind of create a network of support around that. It's always going to be hard, but I don't think that means it's not doable. Yeah. So clearly, like, we're all here. So
yeah. Moral of the story I'm hearing is there will probably be some pushback and some resistance, but it's absolutely, hopefully worth the fight, but you got to do it in a careful way and, in a way that, minimizes risk, even if it can't be eliminated. And so, it sounds like there's a lot of allies from other unions, library unions, who have done this in the past and in the very recent history as well. And so I encourage people to reach out to, John, Allie, Anita, any of the Kat or Cassandra, and I'm sure they can get you on the right path there. And there were some other questions, and I think I probably will ask one more, but I first want to give other people in the audience a chance to ask something. Anita, did you want to say one more comment?
Yes, we also worked on trying to get legislation through the state so that we wouldn't have to go the route of creating bills and creating a law. But that didn't pass, and we're going to try to do that again. But we do need a lot of input from the other counties to help us push that through. So I don't know if something will be going on with that. I know Bridget was involved with that also.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you. And yeah, I didn't know about that law. Is that only for libraries, or that's all for all part-time workers, public sector workers?
It was for all library workers. for all libraries, state of Maryland.
I'm happy to
Okay.
help you with it. If you want to reach
Yeah.
out to me.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. And yes, I encourage people, whether you're watching this live right now or in the future on the recording, please reach out to those folks. And so, yeah, we'll go to questions from the audience now. Ahmed, you've been waiting very patiently, and I appreciate you. I met Ahmed today at the union, support for the Starbucks workers.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. And this is a very important discussion that's going on. This is my first time coming to this meeting, and thanks to organizers and participants here. I wanted to say that, generally, I am for all workers anywhere, everywhere to organize. I've been part of unions for almost all my life. I'm a family from a union family and a country that valued unions. I'm originally from Somalia, East Africa. So the practice of unionization and supporting unions and groups and advocating for these purposes, it has been in my entire life. And that is to say that I am politically a socialist. And I'm only mentioning this because I've attended meetings for different parties and whatnot, and I'm generally not in agreement with some of the ideologies that goes on in these places. So what I wanted to say is we are in a society now where misinformation and disinformation is becoming continuously accepted. And I think that when we discuss topics related to, the library CEO, Howard County Library CEO, or whether we're discussing about the new library, or whether we're discussing about anything else, I think it would be very helpful to, and I'm not finger pointing anybody here, and I'm only saying that our positions and our statements should be grounded with data, with facts, and so that we are able to make changes and have some ways to appeal to people. I understand the data alone is not enough, and sometimes we have to use emotions and history and whatnot. I'm just saying that I have been to for example, I have been to the was part of the listening sessions for the new library. We've asked tough questions. We were concerned about transportation and access issues. Oftentimes they say that when you create a policy, it looks like it's harmless, but once you implement it, then that's when you see all the cracks and who gets what and who doesn't get what. And that's in almost every policy. On paper, it always looks great and fantastic at best. And so there is a lot of issues about everything that's going on. And the, it's to me, I want to work with people, but I want to also work with people where we can come to, supporting the workers. For example, if the library that's closing and employees don't know what's going on, and the one that you just pointed out that will be destroyed and employees don't know what's going on, then that doesn't immediately translate that people will lose their jobs, because we don't have facts to support that. And we need to look into that a little deeper to understand that. And so my point is just that let's understand, let's
I
deploy
need to
people to
interrupt
collect
just a
the data.
second. Ahmed,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
didn't say they were losing their jobs. They didn't know whether one library would be built before the other one is closed. I don't think they were going to lose their jobs. They just didn't know where they would be going if that happened. So that's not at all what was said, just to clarify.
Well, I did hear that that not what they said, but what someone said in here, that they could lose their jobs. That's what I've heard. And so I'm
Okay, that
taking notes
wasn't
as people
me
speak.
or anyone else.
I'm not
sure.
pointing fingers about anybody. All I'm saying is we all have to ground our statements with facts
Yeah.
to the extent possible. That's all I'm saying. I'm not
Yeah.
saying anything else, because that means that our credibility, our positions is compromised if we don't do that.
Yeah.
And the words can get out faster than anywhere else. So
Yeah, I think
and-
that was
and-
a
and when you-
misunderstanding
and
from
the
one of the
issue-
other people.
The issue about the CEO of Howard County Library, that is something that has been deliberated enough, or I think maybe it still needs to be more. And some of the statements that I heard that are not accurate based on my understanding. There are some informations in Howard County Council meetings. There were 3 sessions where witnesses came and testified there. There's a document in the docket that people can I'm pointing to you to what facts are going on. So the library has closed multiple times for decades for special fundraising events and things like that. So
Okay,
this is not
I'm
new.
going to
So
ask,
this is not new.
there a
This is not
question
new.
in here? Because right now, I understand your
I
point of view, I've
want
heard it,
us to
but is
avoid
there a question?
I want us
Yeah.
to avoid
No,
misinformation and
Okay,
disinformation.
good.
That's all.
I
I
got it.
appreciate the
I got
point.
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate the point, Ahmed, and we talked about it earlier today. And I agree with you that, yes, we need to have our facts and our data in the line. I think the comments about people losing their job was more about just like at Starbucks, like, the Starbucks managers are probably looking for any excuse to fire those employees who are trying to unionize because they don't want.
But there
them to
were
unionize.
some of the managers were on the picket with us today. So to say that the managers wanted to, we had a couple managers there, and one of them that's all I'm saying. There were managers on the sidewalk with us today.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's wonderful, but I want to just point out that the only Starbucks was unionized, and I was talking to one of the guys who helped unionize it, and he and a couple other people were fired for frivolous reasons because they did unionize. So this stuff is real.
There was
and
a
I
one
can hook
person
you up
who-
with that guy.
No. There was a one
was
person who was fired from a Starbucks,
In
who used to
Olney.
be a manager. Yes, he used
He
to be a
wasn't
manager.
no.
No. One guy who was there today was a manager at Starbucks, and he was fired from that. So yes,
Yeah.
there are managers who got fired, and there are managers who were on the line today with us. Whether they will be coming back to work tomorrow or not, that's another story, which I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I didn't realize there were managers I saw there were managers sitting in the store on their laptop. So that's good information to have. So thank you, Ahmed. Thank you for joining us tonight, especially on such short notice. You just found out about the panel a couple hours ago, but thank you. I think we'll go to Joel, and then I think we might have to wrap it up for audience questions. And then we do want to give it to our friends a couple minutes. Megan from Harford
Megan is
County
here. Yes.
Libraries, speaking about a legislative effort that they're working on that maybe affects this Howard County law. But real quick, just want to get Joel's had his hand up. So, Joel, you can have last comment.
All right. First, as I put in the chat, I think worrying about the transition between the lakefront and the central branch is the least of our problems. And the FAQ said they'll build the building first. And I think I heard that from Tanya Akins at one of the other events I went with her on. So don't worry about that one. For 3.5 years, I've been trying to get the county library and the county executive to have a mini library in the Harriet Tubman building. If anybody like to help with that, because I think their civility things overlap. And part of the problem is that Rec and Parks likes to pay for all of their expenses by filling up their space and charging, and the library doesn't charge for anything. And the problem is because Rec and Parks takes the space, then the county has to build library space. And the library actually doesn't even know how much it's paying for utilities and maintenance because that's paid for out of DPW, which was estimating that the Lakefront Library would be $600,000 more in maintenance just based on a square footage guess. But a question for some of you that are still left. I talked to a budget analyst from Montgomery County that the Silver Spring Library was, in her opinion, was too big at 3 stories and we had operational issues. So anybody have comments on Silver Spring in particular?
Silver
If
Spring
there's
has a
too
lot
many
of,
floors, that
Silver Spring has a
staff
lot.
can't deal with it.
Silver Spring has a lot of operational issues. It was once again to the point of this, one the first, it was built with a set with ideas and actually money spent on this and contracts bidded for things that would absolutely have no value or purpose or even ever implemented. There's also a train track that rolls right up beside the building, which hasn't happened and probably never will. And operational wise, that's the building I'm referring to that has the problem with the RFID, which is the technology where there was a conveyor belt that was allegedly state of the art at the time. It was in the building. It cost millions of dollars. It only worked for maybe a year and a half. They constantly had to go back to the contractor to try to tweak it and fix it. It has problems with the heating in that building because of how the cooling and air conditioning system was built in that building. It gets too cold. It's not a hospitable place to work, as are many of the Montgomery County Public Library buildings are not, in my opinion, within OSHA compliant regulations for health and safety in regards to how hot they can get and how cold they can get. That's a problem with Silver Spring. There are other infrastructure problems with that building that have to do with the design of the building in and of itself. So when you have these large building projects, I do think the public needs to look at them, and the public does need to scrutinize these building projects, because that's not the only building. I'm not going to go through Montgomery County and name names, but that's not the only building that we've had as part of our building improvement, that it was built and it basically we're working in unfinished buildings. I'm working in a building right now that was rebuilt and opened, I think, in 2010 or 11. It's 2023. They're going to completely renovate it, and they're still fixing problems that never worked back in 2011 when it opened.
Well, yeah.
So
sounds
that's one point I'm going to make there. There's still problems that in the building that I currently work in, which is one of the largest buildings in the county, one of the busiest buildings in the county. It has problems that they were never able to fix in 2011 that are still problems today, and now they're talking about spending more money. So it's a cycle. You build the building never works. You have technology in the building, and particularly in that building I'm in, there is a lighting fixture that will cost $2 million to fix, but was put in the building in 2011, has never worked. So the atrium is dark. It's not illuminated. It was supposed to be in the plans, an illuminated, beautiful light show with a beautiful atrium with these beautiful state-of-the-art lights. They haven't worked since 2014. And the light bulbs cost, I don't know. I don't know what, I don't want to quote prices, but the light bulbs are prohibitively expensive. And to put somebody up there in a cherry picker is not something the county wants to spend money to do, but they paid for it.
Yeah, it sounds like this game that you talk about has been played for a very long time. I'm sure not just in Montgomery County, but I think that's probably a thing that's happening in all counties. So thank you so much to all of the panelists. Great discussion. Again, I didn't even know exactly what everybody has, been exposed to in the other counties, but, it sounds like things aren't too different here in Howard County. And so thank you to the panelists. And before we close out the meeting, want to hand it over to our friend Megan, works for the libraries in Harford County, about some important legislative efforts that they've been working on.
Thanks, Jake. Yes, I am Megan Baker. I have been a Harford County Public Library employee for 18 years now. And we, for the past 2 legislative sessions, have been trying to get a bill passed that would enable us to explore unionizing here in Harford County. The first session, which would have been 2022, We had a Harford County bill that was basically killed by our own delegation because we are a predominantly Republican area. And so, yeah, that was quite disappointing. We tried to change our direction midstream to do it statewide, but that was not possible during that session. So this past 2023 session, that's what we did. We presented legislation that was would apply to any unorganized counties and would also repeal what is currently the law in Howard County. We were a lot more successful than last year. And we really thought that we, going into the middle of the session, that we were going to get it passed through. We were able to get our House bill passed through the House, and then it was moved over to the Senate, where it effectively died in committee and was never brought to a vote. So the thought being is that our legislation probably got traded off for us to get some other legislation passed. So the group that I have here in Harford County, because we've been doing it for so long, it's dwindled quite a bit. A lot of people have left. Morgan, who was on the call earlier, we joke around that it's always the Morgan and Megan show, that we are the resident troublemakers here in Harford County. So if you have a complaint, you bring it to one of us and we speak up for you. But we definitely want to take it to the next level, which would involve unionizing. So we are planning to do another bill this coming session. We have had pushback from a number of directors under the guise of MAPLA, which they introduced their own legislation or proposed legislation, which was, it was modeled after the Harford or the Howard County bill, because that's the one that they all like. Needless to say, it's the only one on record that you have the ability to unionize, but they haven't. So that kind of says a lot right there. That's the one that all of our directors and CEOs are a fan of. And but we have been very adamant about the fact that, you know what, that this is about the workers. It's not about the administrators. It's not about the boards. This is legislation that is based on workers' rights. And really, when it comes down to it, it's not even a whether you're pro-union or anti-union. It's a basic civil, like it's a rights issue. If we were in the private sector, we would be able to unionize. But because of libraries being created by the Maryland legislature, the different county charters, we have to get a law passed in order to have this right. And that's something that I think a lot of people, whenever we talk to people about our legislation, they're always shocked and surprised that this isn't a right that we already have. So we're really hoping to get a lot more support this year. I know it's been challenging to get people from Harford County to come out just because it's exhausting and it takes so much out of your regular life. Like I know Morgan and I kind of tag team this past session where she would go and testify at the Senate and then I would go to the House, and we were going to Annapolis kind of in not in unison because it was difficult to kind of plan that. But yeah, we definitely still want to work through this process. It's just a matter of kind of regrouping and kind of building up that support. So.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing about that effort. So it sounds like that would affect not just Harford County, but all the counties, including Howard County. So
Yes, the only ones that it wouldn't repeal any county. So any counties that are already organized, they would not be affected. The only way that they would be affected would be if they were to decertify, and then our law would take over their law. So
yeah, and I see Ann Bracken saying in the chat, there seems like they're having a similar fight at the state level with tenured and adjunct professors. And yeah, that's a thing I applied to be a union organizer for community colleges, didn't get the job, but just going through the application process, I learned that when they say everybody has a right to unionize, that actually only applies for private sector jobs. For public sector, there needs to be enabling legislation giving you that right. And so that was something I didn't know about until, relatively recently. Well, thank you, Megan, for sharing that, because again, it does affect, definitely Howard County. And so it should be something on our radar. And who's the bill sponsors, by the way?
Last year it was sponsored by Delegate Steve Johnson from Harford County. We did have a co-sponsor in the House, but on the Senate side, we had, I believe it was 7 co-sponsors in the Senate, and we still couldn't get it through. So,
yeah. No, that's like big fraction of the Senate right there.
And we had bipartisan support as well. So
yeah, no, well, that's let's hope that we can get it. Maybe if our state senator Guy Gazzoni, I think from what I understand, he was an ally on the community college unionization maybe, and so I'm quite critical of him, but on if he's good on these issues, then why not work with him. And so thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you, Megan. Thank you everybody who came in the audience. I'm sorry it was a long meeting.
Yes, sorry it went a little long, and we had a little offshoot of a little bit of an argument about Starbucks, but unions, we believe in them, and ORHoCo definitely supports your striving for legislation, and we will stay in touch with you all.
Yes, and so we'll send out the recording of this, and we'll send out the slideshow. But thank you all. Hope people can join us at our next monthly meeting, July 3rd, and stay tuned for any other activities and events we do before then. But thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, and good night. And I'm going to just stop the recording and end the meeting.